MTTB Music Podcast.
Yeah, it's the podcast. And oh God, it's almost like the old days. It's like about hardly a month since we lasted one.
It's too.
So when we used to do that regularly,
Yeah.
it's like a month went by with the podcast. It was like then
In your house, which is wonderful.
yeah, and then things happened,
Yeah.
and then other things happened.
And then other things happen on top of that.
Yeah. Anyway,
Oh well.
podcast 4 of the year. And 6 albums we are talking about this time round are Wolf Alice Blue Weekend, The Anchoress The Art of Losing, Bachelor Doomin Sun, Black Midi Cavalcade, The Veronicas Godzilla, and Weezer Van Weezer.
Cool.
So we'll kick off with the third album from Wolf Alice. Their second album, Visions of Life, which we reviewed on podcast 9 2017.
Oh,
Those who want to go back and listen to that.
Very good.
Received universal acclaim from the music critics, including one Peter Canane. And whilst I liked it, I still felt it was kind of short of being what I kind of thought was great. But you know, Mercury Prize and agreed with you and pretty much everybody else that had it in the top 5 albums that year.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's 4 years on since that record came out.
Gosh.
Is it a welcome return, Pete?
Yes, definitely. It has probably been. It's probably. I was trying to remember a time that I've listened to a record all the way through.
Yeah.
And then put it straight back on. And then put it straight back on again.
Ooh.
And then suddenly hours pass, and I'm like, am I listening to this for the 4th time running? It's been years since I've listened to an album like that. So probably since 2017. So I think that just speaks volumes about how I feel about this record. I love this record. I love it. It's awesome. It's everything I wanted it to be. It's everything I wanted it to be back in 2017 as well. And I remember, you know, there was the track on there, Don't Delete the Kisses, which is an absolute classic of theirs, which I felt, you know, emotionally moved by in a sort of John Peel talking about teenage kicks kind of way.
Yeah.
But let's not go over that old ground again. This album doesn't have one of those sort of instant classics like that, but what it does have across the board is a real step up in quality across all of it. So to say this album doesn't have a Don't Delete, it actually has, you know, 10 tracks or so that are all of a superb standard. So I'm not even going to pick out the tracks I like. I mean, I will say that there are tracks that I do like, and there are definite moods of the album as well, where it does move from very loud post-punk, very driven indie, very similar to some of their earlier work. And then of course there are the softer moments, the more psychedelic moments that we've heard from them previously as well. I think Delicious Things is kind of the proper opener.
That as well.
That as well. It really sort of sets the tone of an ordinary band, an ordinary girl, and an ordinary band now catapulted to extraordinary heights. Such as the song is set in LA.
LA, yes.
And you get that sort of, you can kind of feel that this is where this band is going. They are quite rightly, I think, being lauded now as one of the strongest bands in the UK. Perhaps we haven't seen the like of this since those days of the Arctic Monkeys. Dare I say it?
Yeah.
Loved it.
I have to pretty much agree. I think this album has slightly more, for me at least, I thought it had slightly more kind of pop sensibilities going through it than the previous 2 records, and definitely showed a progression from those two records. And one of the things I liked about it, even though it's shown that progression as well, is I still don't think they have a easily identifiable, oh, that's a Wolf Alice type song. And I think that's a good thing, because that actually means that there's variety in there.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the really strong things about this album, from the kind of chugging, building guitars on the beach,
Yeah.
opening track, through to the kind of almost Cocteau Twins-esque lipstick.
Yes.
When she does sound like she's channeling Elizabeth Fraser.
Yeah.
And as there's a track towards the end as well, what's it called? Feeling Myself, which has that kind of drums, the Massive Attack, Elizabeth Fraser teardrop kind of drums going through it as well. And then you've got gentle folk sensibilities of Safe from Heartbreak, which is really, really, really lovely. And there's a track on it, two of the rockier tracks on it. Smile reminded me of the Nova Twins album that we reviewed last year.
Yeah.
Very similar to that. And dare I say it, the Play the Greatest Hits song actually reminded me of Shampoo.
Oh yeah. No,
I'm not saying that's a bad thing as well, just for the record.
There's a riff in there. There's a real Nine Inch Nails riff that I keep sort of. I'm like, is that from? It's from sort of Fragile or With Teeth sort of era of Nin. It's like, it's very, anyway. I'm getting off track. Carry on. Sorry.
But yeah, but I think my favourite track on the album is actually How Can I Make It, which is kind of pretty much bang smack in the middle of the album, pretty much, which I think is just a perfect song. But yeah, overall I think it's this album delivers what for me the previous album didn't quite deliver, but was close to.
I know exactly what you mean.
And so this one, I'm on board with the Lord It to High Heaven brigade, and I expect this will appear in a lot of top fives come the end of 2021.
I suspect it'll be mine.
I suspect
I've just spoiled the end of the year show.
We move on to the second album, the Anchoress, Art of Losing, a second album from Catherine Ann Davies, Welsh multi-instrumentalist. It's her first album in 5 years, produced and written by her and created, having read around it in the aftermath of a few pretty shitty years where she could have lost a father, a baby, and has undergone treatment for cervical cancer. So perhaps not surprising to find that it's a bit dark lyrically.
No, very.
If you just pick a couple of tracks at random before I speak more broadly to the record, and The Art of Losing, the title track, has lines in it like, how much more can she take, one more child, one more rape now, and also, so what did you learn when life was unkind and there was some purpose to losing my mind? And I know we're all ill at ease with questions of need, absolving ourselves in situations like these. I think those two things comment quite broadly to what is happening in the album. It does seem to be a lot of that kind of questioning yourself and almost trying to forgive yourself for guilt about things that have happened in your life, and trying not to blame yourself for everything that's gone on in your life. And all this coalesces around arguably the most powerful song on the album, which is 5 AM, which is a very simple sounding song, but is about the impact of a sexual assault which draws on her own experience as a teenager. So I'm probably making it sound rather glum, but actually similar to the first album, I think this is an achingly beautiful and moving record about grief and inner torment. If we go back to the start of the record, it's opened, it's topped and tailed. Funny enough, like Dan was talking about by a track that has basically the same name. So this was called Moonrise Prelude and then Moon End. Both nominally instrumental pieces, although the second iteration of it has some mumbling, talking in the background that you can't really hear until the very final line of the album, which is her saying, "For once in your life, just let go." So that starts off and you're thinking, I could literally listen to that opening piece of instrumental music over and over again, and I'd be happy. Wouldn't have to go further than that. But then you get into the album proper, and it starts off with "Let It Hurt." This is one of a couple of tracks on the album where she reminded me vocally of Amy Mann. Definitely a bit of that going on. Also, I think All Farewell Should Be Sudden as well has that similar kind of vibe on it. And then at other parts of the record, she sounded very much like Terry Nunn, the lead singer from Berlin. Both on the song Unravel and on the very Berlin sounding Show Your Face. It's also a duet with James D. Bradfield, The Exchange. She's good friends with the band. She sang on the last album. It processes a lot about, again, how I feel about this record, in that I actually think it's one of the weakest moments on the record, despite being a very good song. I love this. Similar to the album we just talked about. This is another album that I played, got to the end, and I thought, oh, this is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And went back and played it again. Played it again. And I thought, this is going to be a good podcast. Frankly, it's like two albums, but I'm gone. Yeah, this is what we want. Albums you put on and go, this is not only saying something, it's meaningful, it's engaging, and also very similar to what we were saying about Wolf Alice. It's also not samey either. It's musically, it kind of goes in quite a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
So yeah, similar to Wolf Alice album, I'll be very surprised if this album is not in my top 5 come the end of the year.
It's a very, very deep, engaging, interesting album, which I liked, and also the sort of the journey it goes on. It sort of belies how much of a pop album it is actually as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some really poppy songs.
There's real sort of maturity to the pop music within it. I mean, more so in the first half, which I think I kind of found easier to listen to and preferred, but on repeated listening, obviously getting to the second half, it's a much more musically more mellow album. But as you say, all the way through it, you've got some what could be lyrically very jarring, upsetting lyrics, but actually the whole thing just moves so beautifully that it's not jarring at all. It takes you on a journey, and it just does it so well. You know, the songwriting you've mentioned, sort of the sort of pace of that, it just really sort of flows. The James Dean Bradfield made me laugh though, because in talking of pop, I was convinced he was doing his best Robbie Williams impersonation at one point. It sounded so, because we reviewed that album of his last year.
We did,
was it last year? Yeah.
He was last year, yes.
On this, he sounded completely different. You know, he was going for it, which is nice. But yeah, I completely agree with all your comments. It's a really sort of beautifully crafted album. It's, you know, it's wrought, it's angst, but actually it's delivered so well.
Right, moving on to Bachelor Doomin Sun. This is a side project by a couple of artists called Melina Duarte from J Som and Ellen Kempfner from Pale Hound, with an album of sort of love songs in a strange kind of indie way.
Yeah, it's a really quirky album. This
it is quirky, yes.
Not the quirkiest, but
I think quirky is a good description.
Really quirky, so a quirky indie album, the sort of album you might have stumbled across. And not for the first time on this podcast from here on in, I'm going to mention the 1990s. It's sort of that sort of, not shoegazy, but that sort of a kind of post-grunge American indie project that you might have emerged sort of 93, 94. It comes from that sort of era of indie rock and it's vaguely reminiscent of the sort of music at that time, and again, it sort of goes along at quite an interesting pace, and there's some sort of different variations on a theme there, and the songs are all really nice. I mean, you know, the love songs, you know, I really enjoyed, you know, Stay in the Car.
Yeah, Stay in the Car is really good.
And Spin Out as well. You know, it's it's artistic, but it's fun, you know.
Yes.
No, I yeah, that's it. That's me. That's me on that one.
Well, as I say, I really liked Stay in Car, which I thought was very Belly-esque.
Yes. Going for Belly.
And is it anything at all towards the end of the album, which I quite liked as well. And you know, this was for me. This was the classic, solid album.
Yeah, classic, but in a good way.
Yes, to use our trademarked CTDB music
very much
review.
So.
You mentioned quirky. We move on to Black Midi Cavalcade. It is the second album from a bunch of Brit schoolboys. The opening bars of this record and the track John L. had me taken back to the wondrous world of Frank Zappa at his most avant-garde.
Yeah.
With added Robert Fripp and Billy Cobham perhaps thrown in. Frankly, it was just like, this is marvellous, this is great. And at the same time, it was one of those things that I immediately listened to and I thought, this is one I should really put on for the whole family to hear. I didn't, because believe me, I know that within about 10 seconds of this being on, I would have been asked to, in no uncertain terms, to take this record off.
Yeah.
And it kind of set a stall out, which is then bizarrely almost immediately upturned, because you go into the next track, Marlene Dietrich, which is more of a kind of laid back kind of folky number.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, all right, confused, right, fine. Thankfully for me, all was not lost, because we then go back to some madness, if in a slightly less confrontational way. But for me, the biggest issue of that album was that I loved the unhinged joy that John L. gave me so much that nothing else on the album could compare or indeed drag me back. Even though there is a cacophony of prog, jazz, folk and rock kind of all just thrown in. And I was thinking at certain times that you're thinking, this is the kind of thing Bowie would have been a fan of quite a lot of this.
Yeah.
He would have been a backer of this band, kind of going, go for it.
Yeah.
Some brilliant bass playing on a couple of the tracks. Track Slow and the one before that, Chonda, whatever, I can't remember the title of it. I think I could pronounce it at the time when I was looking at it on my phone. But really good, just really good bass playing and some interesting stuff going in.
Chandra. Good grief.
Exactly, yeah, that one.
That one.
Yeah.
The track before Slow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
If you've seen the album anyway or everything, you'll know which one we mean.
Chandra Malika Patella. I'm going to go with that.
That's exactly what I said.
That's just on the tip of your tongue.
Which is quite good, and I also liked that again. What I thought Bowie would like it on Dethroned. The guy singing has a very kind of his best kind of Scott Walker kind of impersonation on that. And also I really liked the mix of the bass in that, and then you get the kind of riff heavy start that's going to take over. So I can't, with hand on heart, say that it wasn't an interesting record to listen to, because it is, and there's a fuckload going on in it. Does it hang together as a record? Probably not for me. And like I said, outside of John L., which just the bonkersness of it to start the album with, I just loved. The rest of it didn't kind of match up.
I'm inclined again to agree. I mean, the opening track, it's utter madness. Utter madness. Frank Zappa, acid jazz, spoken word, rock, all thrown in together with some silences and some not so silent silences and some thundering bass noises, like that effect you get when you listen to, you have your headphones on and the wind blows through them, all that stuff. That's just crazy. I thought Marlene Dietrich kind of settled into something. I thought, okay, I see where we're going now, because it all went a bit Divine Comedy.
Yes.
In terms of where that's sort of not a bit folksy, but you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean. In terms of them, you know, I thought that sort of settled down. But then it just sort of jumps back, as you say, into all these different sort of. I mean, Slow. Spoiler, it's not.
Yes.
Hogwash and Boulder Dash. I think that was probably my favourite, if not the song, the title. And you mentioned Scott Walker ascending forth at the end.
Yes.
There was a very, I wouldn't say even Scott Walker. I'm trying to think of the Rat Pack. Pick one.
Dean Martin.
Yeah, Dean Martin. Yes, it was Dean Martin, and that sort of very Girl from Ipanema. I know that's Frank Sinatra, but you know that sort of style.
Although I just said that track's interesting because
swinging 60s.
Because the thing is, that track kind of lures you, almost kind of you're almost expecting it to be building towards something, and then it just doesn't go anywhere, and then just ends. You know,
so that was quite a kind of nice nod to the 60s, a lounge. It was, I like that, but does it hang together well? No. Right,
moving on from weirdness to
weird.
Probably the pop album of the podcast, I guess. The Veronicas, the fourth studio album by the Origliasto twins. Their first for 7 years. Last album was self-titled Veronicas. I'm fairly certain we reviewed it, but I can't find the podcast we reviewed it in.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. I believe we were sat at the desk.
God,
Yeah.
that is a long
Yes.
time ago.
Because nothing worse is I was just demonstrating.
Yeah, that's
Like,
good.
it's like good radio, good podcasting. Yeah. Yes, just demonstrating something that you can't actually see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the first of 2 albums they're planning to release this year. This is meant to be the upbeat kind of pop record with a second more kind of laid back singer-songwritery thing due in another month or so's time, I believe. So, what do we think of Godzilla?
I liked it. I mean, again, more 90s infused rock to begin with. But then, of course, it settles into the sort of pop music of which fans of Veronicas will be more familiar. I thought it transitions well and throughout the album. I particularly liked... I mentioned the opening track, Godzilla. I thought it was very much Hole-inspired rock. I think In My Blood, which is like 2 or 3 tracks in, the big EDM pot hit, it's massive. I was like, yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is good. This is good. I like this. And again, as an album, it's similar to perhaps one of the ones we reviewed earlier. It's again, first half feels like it's louder.
Yeah.
Second half starts to sort of mellow slightly. And except for, I think with this track, one of my favourite, certainly lyrically, was is it Steaming Cars?
Yeah, Steaming Cars.
Steaming Cars. I always love the chorus lyrics of that. It was like racing cars, drinking in bars, strip clubs, waking in bathtubs, and all sort of rhyme together. Much better than I've just done it. And I just thought, yeah, this hedonism, but done well. Yeah. Lyrically, I really enjoyed that. It made me chuckle. So yeah, I'd have to say, great. Yeah, great, solid, but better than solid pop album. Look forward to what comes next, because I think actually it's always difficult when you know the 2 albums recorded that close together to get a sense that this is the sort of the louder public, and the other one's probably much more.
Yes, it will be interesting
private.
To see how that pairs up. Well, I mean, I do like the Veronicas, and I've seen them live on a couple of occasions. I do think they're definitely one of those bands that, when they get it right, they produce some cracking pop tunes. And there's examples of that on this record. I think mostly in the first half of the album, if I'm honest, rather than the second half of the album. And say Godzilla's fun. I think Kaleidoscope, which is the second album, is with his pitch shifting chorus, banging tune, as they used to say. In My Blood, which you mentioned, was a single that came out about 3 years ago now, when they were first trying to do this album. And then lots of things happened, and obviously didn't happen, and various other things. But still, it's been slightly reworked for the purposes of this album, but it's still a really good song. High Score as well, that was the song I liked. I could almost imagine kind of Taylor Swift doing that kind of thing.
I like, High Score.
Stealing Cars, which you mentioned, really, really, really good. There are a couple of songs I was less keen on, In It to Win It, and I think 101 something or other, which were a bit too little mixy for me. And that's nothing against Little Mix, because I saw them live. But it just didn't feel as strong. And I also quite like I think towards the end, The Only High, which is what the main ballad on the album.
Ballad.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So yeah, overall I thought pretty good, and as you say, it'll be quite interesting to see what the companion album is like.
Yeah, we should review that one.
We should indeed. So we finish with some rock, and Weezer and Van Weezer, another album that was delayed due to COVID. This is Rivers Cuomo and the band returning to their Cars influenced rock roots to rattle through 30 minutes, and I mean rattle through 30 minutes of fun 80s stadium rock.
Yeah.
I think they chose to do this kind of album because they're meant to be going out on tour with Green Day and Fall Out Boy, so they obviously wanted an appropriate album to be touring with. Again, it's a reminder of when they're kind of firing on all cylinders of how good they are at this type of stuff. It is kind of literally kind of Bill and Ted's Wild Stallions type thing. Wrote wild, really. It's from the opening track, Hero, which, interestingly for pop trivia people, has Daniel Got to Get Through This Beddingfield as one of the co-writers. But from that moment to the end of the album, it is literally a foot-tapping, head-bobbing slice of summer rock fun. And arguably, I don't really say more than that, really. It doesn't really hang around long enough to get boring or annoying. It's clearly not reinventing anything or doing anything new, and indeed, it lifts from Asia's Heat of the Moment, Blue Oyster Cults, Don't Fear the Reaper, Billy Joel's For the Longest Time, Motley Crue's Girls, 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 and most obviously on the song Blue Dream, when it literally is the opening thing. Crazy Train from Ozzy Osbourne. But the thing is, with tunes like Hero, End of the Game, Beginning of the End, and Sheila Can Do It, as well as the very fun metal riffing on One More Hit.
One More Hit.
I was left pretty happy. A good album to end a podcast on, I think.
Definitely. We've covered some pretty deep lyrics, some dark lyrics, some ethereal lyrics. Here's some lyrics I could have written when I was 15.
Yeah.
but yet so enjoyable. Particularly One More Hit, which could be a simple song about sex or drugs,
yes,
or both. Who knows? It's the classic 90s rock. You summed it up best when you said Bill and Ted. It's fresh from the indie disco. It's a jolly record. It's a fun record. So why knock it? It's a really nice one to finish on.
Yeah.
And actually, I think this is. I feel like this is the first podcast we've had for a while where actually we've come out of this. I've come out of this one smiling, because I think the first one we did when we were back together in the studio last time round was a bit mellow. I don't know if that was us or maybe that was the selection of records. I feel like the records are starting to catch up with 2021, whatever that means.
Well, let's hope it continues for the next podcast. I think anyone that's listening to it, we don't really need to say what our albums